Hi, friends. My name is Katie Bishop, and I'm the pastor here at Middletown United Methodist Church. And I am so thankful for your desire to help serve in our children and youth ministries. The intention of this video is to help you understand the policies and procedures in place to keep children safe. In the United Methodist Church, that policy is called our Safe Sanctuary Policy. At the end of this video, we will ask you to fill out a form and return it to the office before you are able to serve and work with our children. Again, thank you for your time and for your service. It is a blessing. Ensuring a safe and Christ-reflecting environment at Middletown United Methodist Church is the responsibility of all of its members, volunteers, staff, clergy, and welcome visitors. In support of this responsibility, we have created policies to protect the most vulnerable among us, our children. There is no better time than now to recommit ourselves to this policy and protection. The 2-adult rule. Regardless of group size, there should be at least 2 adults present. During a time when many people are in the building, like Vacation Bible School, this may include 1 adult in a room and an assigned adult floater who moves in and out of multiple rooms and ministry activities. Bring a buddy. Adults are never to be alone with a single child or youth that is not in their personal custody and care. One way to help prevent this from happening is for the youth or child to bring a buddy with them as they travel in the building with an adult to the bathroom or to the nurse. 2 children and 1 adult can move through our space for limited periods of time and fulfills our Safe Sanctuaries policy. Adults should remain outside of bathrooms within earshot in case help is needed. Outside restroom doors should be propped open and children should use the stalls. Adults should use the adult-only bathrooms during ministry events. Public view is important. All ministry activities will take place in assigned locations in public view. Enclosed spaces such as classrooms shall have a glass panel in the door or an open door. Assigned locations and off-limit areas will be determined by the leadership for each event and communicated to all participants. Always supervised. No child or youth will be left unsupervised while participating in a ministry activity or event. It is expected that at least 1 adult will be first aid CPR trained. At Vacation Bible School 2024, first aid CPR trained adults will wear a special red name tag. These adults will provide medical intervention if necessary. Sign in, sign out. MUMC is responsible for each child and youth from the beginning of an event to the end of the event in the location that the event occurs. Good communication shall occur about sign-in procedures when they are used for events and age groups. Since leaders plan ministry activities to fill the time together, we prefer prior notice if a child needs to leave early. Written notice must be provided to the staff person in charge if children are to be released to persons other than their parents. MUMC is not responsible for children or youth not signed into an event. Every person under the age of 18 must be signed in and signed out of events at Middletown. Related volunteers. If adult volunteers are related, for example, married couples, and are serving together, there's a potential legal risk to them should either be accused of abuse or neglect because they might not be able to testify on each other's behalf. If the only adult volunteers available are related, their assignment must be approved by the Staff Parish Relations Committee, or the SPRC, and the pastor and the parents must be made aware. The 2-adult rule does not prohibit one-on-one mentoring, as long as appropriate supervision and transparency are achieved, including communication with parents and church staff about when, where, with whom, and why such meetings are taking place. Meetings are scheduled during reasonable hours. Meetings take place in public or in church facilities in accordance with the following guidelines. Pastoral crisis intervention. The 2-adult rule does not prohibit occasional one-on-one pastoral crisis intervention with reasonable transparency conducted in open space and accountability. Repeated need for crisis intervention may indicate a need for referral for pastoral counseling or assistance. Ratios. Middletown United Methodist Church seeks to exceed the Maryland Child Care Law and rules minimum for teacher-to-child ratios and class size in every ministry. Our Kids Club, PTO, and preschool program are required by law to follow these ratios. Information about current ratios can be found in our printed Safe Sanctuary policy. The next several slides share information about our communication with youth policy. First, permission. Parents or legal guardians should always be informed of the ways the staff and volunteers of the church may be contacting their children by phone, email, text message, instant message, and social media. For children and youth, birth through 5th grade, church staff and volunteers should communicate through parents and guardians. For youth in 6th to 8th grades, only those whose parents or legal guardians have given written permission for their children to receive phone, text, Facebook, or internet communication from a staff member or volunteer may be contacted directly by a staff member or volunteer. It is the responsibility of the staff member to attain such permission. Communication with middle school students should strive to be in a form that copies their parents and guardians. For youth members in grades 9 through 12, staff and volunteers will assume permission to communicate via text, call, email, or church-sanctioned communication channels unless parents or legal guardians expressly forbid such contact between staff and youth by contacting the church office. This communication should be simple and quick for sharing events information. Online platforms with youth in grades 9 through 12. Staff and volunteers should not request follow or friend anyone under 18 via social media platforms unless they are related to that child or youth. If the child or youth requests to follow or friend, it is up to the requested adult's best discretion after the parents or legal guardians have been consulted. Staff and volunteers should not be connected on any private platform or app or one that has images or text that are fleeting or disappears. This both protects the youth and the adults. Staff and volunteers can connect with youth in public platforms only. Use of a private message type function can only be used by a youth to ask an adult if they have time to talk. The adult must then arrange for an accepted way to connect with youth, for example, in a public location, with another adult, and during reasonable hours as described. All texting, email, online conversations with minors should be saved and available to show at any time when asked by the SPRC team, ministry leader, or senior pastor. It is important to know that appropriate hours for normal communication with youth are between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. Staff and volunteers should not be communicating with youth in evening or overnight hours unless there's an emergency. If the youth is reaching out to the adult to talk about something that can wait, the adult should arrange a time to meet during reasonable hours and in a public place. They can follow the one-on-one mentoring supervision protocol. If the youth isn't experiencing an emotional, physical, or psychological emergency, the staff member or volunteer should bring in another person to the conversation who is either on the pastoral team or another Safe Sanctuary trained individual. If the youth is reluctant, explain why this is the best way that you can support them. You might ask their thoughts on which adults they might want to invite in. Do not promise to keep anything confidential in a situation where there is a threat of a young person doing harm to themselves or to others. Church use of images. MUMC will use images in print or electronic form from activities and events without identifying names for anyone under the age of 18. Images should be approved by the church staff before they are shared. To restrict what might be shared, parents and guardians should contact the church office. Image content should never be sexually suggestive, explicit, or otherwise inappropriate to the age of the child or youth or to the practice of ministry. For information about the creation of and our policy regarding church social media accounts, please read the printed copy of our Safe Sanctuaries policy. Inappropriate communication from youth. Any staff member or volunteer receiving inappropriate or questionable communication from a minor in person or otherwise, should not respond without consulting one of the ministry staff and determining a plan of response, which may involve contacting parents, police, or children's services. Transportation. The next few slides highlight some of our important policies around transportation, but the full transportation policy can be found in the printed copy of our Safe Sanctuaries policy. Students must have written permission to sign themselves and their siblings out of an event. Students must also have written permission to drive themselves and/or their siblings home. Only adults listed on the youth's emergency form can sign out a youth. Parents can update this list at any time by putting it in writing to the youth director, who will add it and date it on the form. For Vacation Bible School 2022, parents filled out acceptable adults who can sign in and sign out their young person when they registered. If parents would like to add additional adults to this policy, they can do so by emailing the church office. Ministry events involving transportation shall require a written consent form signed by the parent and guardian of the child, youth, or adult. Adults who provide transportation for an official youth event shall sign a covenant for driving. Adults transporting minors must be 25 years old, have been driving for at least a year, have a clean driving record, which should be checked and returned to the church before driving. Adults should have emergency information for youth with them in their vehicle. Adults who drive should not be alone in their car with a youth who is not in their personal custody and care. In an unexpected case where an adult finds himself alone with youth, they should seek to, quote-unquote, bring another adult into the vehicle. This adult can be virtually included via a FaceTime type of app or a phone call. The senior staff leader or pastor should be notified of their plan. Texting these people when they get in the car with the youth, and then again when the youth is dropped off, creates a time frame of safety. The next section of our video talks about child abuse and reporting. We do understand that this section of video might be triggering for some who are watching. Maryland state law states that any person who has reason to believe that a child under 18 years of age has been subjected to abuse or neglect is required to notify the local Office of Child Protective Services or the local law enforcement agency. It is the policy of MUMC that any adult who in any way interacts with a child under 18 years of age in the adult's capacity as a staff member of MUMC or an adult volunteer for MUMC, and who has a reason to believe that a child has been subjected to abuse or neglect, shall immediately report the suspected abuse or neglect to the pastor of MUMC and/or the chairperson of SPRC. Further reporting required by law shall be made without delay by the pastor or the chairperson of SPRC. We will now watch a video from another agency that helps us better understand what to look for when it comes to signs of abuse and neglect.
In this video, we'll define the types of abuse, including physical, sexual, and emotional, and discuss how to recognize their signs. It is important to keep in mind that a single indicator is not always proof of abuse. Be on the lookout for patterns or suggestions that there might be a problem. Physical abuse is the use of physical force that may result in bodily injury, physical pain, or impairment. It includes hitting, beating, pushing, shaking, kicking, slapping, pinching, choking, pulling hair, and burning. The definition also includes inappropriate use of drugs or physical restraints, as well as force feeding, reckless driving, and physical punishment. What are the signs of physical abuse? An obvious sign is if the individual makes a specific complaint about mistreatment. Other signs to watch out for include unexplained or poorly explained injuries, such as fractures, sprains, dislocations, internal injuries, or bleeding. Pay attention to bruises, bites, cuts, sores, burns, scars, or head trauma. Another sign of physical abuse can be a sudden change in the victim's behavior, such as aggression, withdrawal, regression, substance abuse, depression, attempts to escape, wariness of physical contact, or fear of certain places. Signs of physical abuse also include sudden loss of weight, teeth, or hair. Be concerned if the person under your care and the people around them have different explanations for the cause of injuries. Another red flag may be if he or she seems afraid of or wants to avoid a particular person. Pay close attention if you notice frequent or suspicious hospitalizations, or if there are delays between the onset of an injury and seeking medical care. Sexual abuse is non-consensual sexual contact of any kind. It includes rape and molestation, but also any sexual conduct with a person who is unable to consent. Both women and men may be victims of sexual abuse, and children and people who have physical or cognitive disabilities are particularly vulnerable. So are people who lack social support or are isolated. What are the signs of sexual abuse? One clear sign is if someone specifically communicates that they have been sexually abused. Other signs include reports of genital or anal pain, irritation or bleeding, and difficulty walking or sitting. Watch out for torn, stained, or bloody underclothes or sexually transmitted diseases. Behavior changes may also be a clue to possible sexual abuse, such as inappropriate, unusual, or aggressive sexual behavior. Also keep an eye out for bedwetting or changes in sleep patterns, such as over or undersleeping and nightmares. Is the person under your care suddenly afraid of the dark and avoiding undressing? Is he or she wearing extra layers of clothing? All of these could be signs of sexual abuse. Emotional abuse is the infliction of pain, anguish, or distress, and is sometimes called psychological abuse. Someone may cause emotional abuse by using verbal assaults, threats, or insults. This type of abuse also includes intimidation, humiliation, and harassment, but may also be more subtle, such as isolating a person from their family, friends, or regular activities. What are the signs of emotional abuse? Of course, a specific complaint is a clear sign, but there are less obvious signs, such as significant weight loss or gain, depression, confusion, agitation, and withdrawal. Pay attention to unexplained rashes, hives, facial tics, stomach aches, or elevated blood pressure. Other red flags may be new nervous habits such as biting, rocking, head banging, bedwetting, and thumb sucking. Anyone can be a perpetrator of abuse. Most victims of abuse are harmed by someone they know, such as family members, acquaintances, dating partners, or caregivers. Remember, it's important to distinguish between types of abuse. The signs of physical abuse, for example, are different than the signs of sexual or emotional abuse. In any type of abuse, the perpetrator may be anyone and is often known by the victim.
As a mandated reporter, we must report any suspicion of abuse. When a staff member or volunteer has reason to believe that a child has suffered abuse or neglect, whether the abuse has been suspected to occur at the church or at home, they must respond. Time and proper communication are essential. Many of the steps for reporting happen concurrently. For a full copy of the steps for reporting abuse, please look in our printed copy of our Safe Sanctuaries policy. Matthew 18:5 reads, "Whoever welcomes a child welcomes me." The social principles of the United Methodist Church, by which our congregation is influenced, states that children must be protected from economic, physical, and sexual exploitation and abuse. Our Safe Sanctuaries policy and training is one effort to do that. Physical, emotional, and sexual abuse is completely unacceptable. These abuses are breaches of our most fundamental belief to love one another as God has loved us. The policies that are shared in this video and found in the printed Safe Sanctuaries form meet the current state standards and those passed by the Baltimore-Washington Conference of the United Methodist Church, aimed at eliminating any potential for child sexual abuse within the church. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video and for caring for the children entrusted into our care. Blessings to you and the ministry in which you participate in at Middletown.